Hey y'all, I'm here in Connellsville, Ohio, here at one of the locks here. And along this river, the Muskingum River, there are all these locks. And these things are actually still hand operated. Check it out. You turn these thingamajiggies and then you open up that thingamajiggy and then, you know, I don't really know how it works, but that's generally the idea. And so they made all these locks way back in the 1830s. They started making these things, and this allowed for trade up and down this river as people up the river could grow foods, and then they could ship it down here on steamboats, and they could come in here and deliver it here where they had the processing plants and all that. And they happened to have this great little park with a nice little dog park, and so I figured I would come out here and speak a little bit to what I've seen on my journey through the last 9 states. And this one, Ohio, is my 9th. I've previously gone through Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia. And so, of course, I've seen quite a lot of stuff, taken a lot of these back roads and such. And I am very happy that the Google Maps thing that I use gives me this opportunity to avoid highways and get out here in the real world and see real America. Because I've driven on highways or on interstates before, and they're really good for commercial traffic and getting from place to place as quickly as you can, but you don't see anything. So I've enjoyed seeing America more for who she really is, and that's kind of part of my goal in this whole journey, is to see more of this country. And of course, with a lot of the homes and businesses that I've seen a number of flags that have been raised. And now that I'm in here in Ohio, I'm noticing a difference considerably in a lot of the ways that people decorate their house. So throughout the South, you see quite a few American flags, and you also see quite a number of Confederate battle flags, and you also see quite a few Trump flags. You still see a few Biden and Harris signs every now and then, but most people are like, yeah, the election's over, they're done with that. But you get a lot of people in the South who have their Trump 2024 flags out already, and they are geared up for their next competition. So seeing a lot of that. In Ohio, I'm just seeing American flags and some Trump flags still, but I'm not seeing a lot of Confederate battle flags. And coming through the South and coming from the South, this has been a big point of contention for me personally, and of course socially, because a lot of my loved ones are still very much part of that Southern heritage, and they see a lot of the attacks made on the Confederacy as of late by like destroying their statues and such, and they're taking that very personally. Personally, I had a horse when I was growing up. She was a chocolate palomino, beautiful horse, great personality. Her name was Dixie. And I had a hat that had a Confederate battle flag on there waving with the word Dixie on it. And I was proud to be a rebel. I remember seeing a sign, "Save your Confederate money, boys, the South gonna rise again." And that was part of my heritage, and that was part of my tradition. You know, it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I started saying, oh, wait a minute. It was the Civil War thing. What was this really all about? And there are a number of people who say that the war was largely about states' rights, but those states' rights were about which states, which entities which we create as humans, could decide whether or not other people with various amounts of melanin in their skin or from certain regions, which ones were allowed to have the rights and dignities of a human being, and which ones could be considered cattle and property for other human beings. And so those Confederates who wanted the rights to be able to decide that for themselves and not allow that infringement upon the federal government went to war over it. Now, a lot of us looking back after the last almost 160 years, I figured that the Americans won, but there are still people that Confederacy is still part of their heritage and their culture. And even though a lot of us look at it and see it as racist and promoting slavery and the subjugation of the African American people and all of that, for a lot of people who were born in the South, that's a flag they united under. Just as much as some of them were trying to use it as a way to continue slavery, others this was part of their families. This is where they still found union, where they still found connection, where they still found love. And I know that a lot of people are really angry at that flag, and just like the Nazi flag, it can make people very emotional. But it's important that we remember that even though there's a lot of people that have this as their tradition and haven't recognized themselves for who they really are fully, that their ego still needs to connect to this as part of their identity, we need to realize that as humans, beyond that, there's still beautiful things about them. People from the South, they make beautiful music, they make amazing pies, they make great sweet tea, and there's a lot of wonderful things to appreciate these people, even though there are disagreements on what we hold dear, what we hold relevant, and what we use to symbolize who we are as people and identify with ourselves. Now, for those of you who are Confederates and you're like really, stuck on it and say this is your part of your heritage, part of your tradition and all that, just please understand that in a lot of states we only have one flag that we're allegiance to. And so it can be rather disconcerting when you're showing allegiance to another flag as well, especially when it's an organization that took arms against the United States government and its people in order to subjugate some of them to slavery. So a lot of people still have issues with that. And so I hope you can understand that this isn't just something that people are just pissed off at you because you're trying to express your First Amendment rights, but, you're venerating people who turn their backs on our country. And for those of you who say that the removal of the Confederate statues that venerate and honor those men who fought against this country and fought to maintain slavery as a viable economic system, a lot of people have said, and I've heard, that it is erasing our history. But I would challenge anyone to give me one name of any human being who no longer exists on our timeline because we have taken away their statue. I think everyone who contributed to the Civil War on both sides still exists in our timeline. The things that they did, they still did them. They still happened. Even for those whose statues have been taken down, that history has not been changed. We still had slavery in this country. We still had a big old fight over it. And you can look in different museums, and you can look on the internet, and all kinds of books, and that history is still there, despite those statues. But I'm all for taking that material and venerating something else that will unite us more, or make some kind of reparations for those who were held in slavery and had to endure that kind of life where they don't have traditions and cultures anymore. At least in the South, in either Appalachia, however you pronounce it in your region, at least here you have a tradition and a culture that you can come from. You can trace it back for many, many generations. A lot of those folks who came over as slaves, their tradition was erased. Their heritage was just taken from them. And they don't have that like you do. So my point is to say also, I've also found that a lot of people who are Christian are very devoted to the Confederacy. And that, unfortunately, was twisted together through the Christian Brothers of the Ku Klux Klan. It was a large part of that. And obviously, a lot of those white landowners at the time were of Christian origins, and so that religion became very tied in with it. But for those of you who are true followers of Christ, true followers of Christianity, if there can be that, I just keep coming back to that verse in 2 Corinthians, that when you are a new creature in Christ, old things are passed away. And so, as much as I can understand how these histories were tied together, I also think that the Confederacy has been dead for 160 years nearly. That's an old thing. Why aren't you letting it pass away and becoming new? I guess my question is, what role does the U.S. Confederacy play in the kingdom of God? Is it a necessary role? Is it an eternal thing that we need to continue upholding and venerating and wagging flags for, even though that movement is over and dead? and the short-sighted ones lost. Now we've seen new ways of doing things, new ways of coming together and creating community and building the world that we want. And I don't see the Confederacy as a necessary part of that. But I understand a lot of people still like the flag. Some of them it does mean because it's a racist thing, absolutely. Some of them use it because they don't like black people and that keeps them away. But some of them it's just their heritage. And they really haven't given it the thought to consider whether or not it's something they really want to continue honoring in their lives. I think in the last year, especially with our pandemic, we have had to break a lot of traditions. We have had to change the way that we do a lot of things. And in some ways, we've realized ways that work better for us now. And we're not as subject to the limitations that we were. But in other ways, we get the opportunity to look at all of the traditions and heritage that we have. And which ones do we want to continue? Which ones do we really want to uphold? So I don't know. That's a personal question for everybody out there, kind of rhetorical. But understand everybody is making their own decisions. And we all get the right to do that. But look for the beauty in people beyond whatever differences they're clinging to. Find ways to connect. There's one thing I can tell you after going through all these different states. This is a beautiful, beautiful country. And we're given great opportunities to do some wonderful things with one another. And it's a damn shame that we hate each other so much for stupid reasons. So find somebody to love that you probably couldn't have done yesterday, I suppose. Or be as miserable as you want to be. It's your life.